Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a world of smoke, ice, and very loud goats. You're not in your memory foam mattress anymore, you're waking up in a Viking longhouse somewhere on the windswept coast of 9th century Scandinavia. The roof creaks, your toes are half frozen, and someone's already yelling about chores. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while we're at it, tell me where you're tuning in from and what time it is in your part of the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake before the sun. Not because you want to, of course. The chill snuck in sometime during the night, and now your breath clouds the air like a ghost hovering over your face. Your feet? Numb blocks of ice. Your fingers? Wooden. You peel back a coarse wool blanket that smells vaguely of smoked fish. An old man. Welcome to the longhouse. It's dark, smoky, and cramped. 30 people share this single-room structure, including children, livestock, and at least one elderly woman who sleeps with a pet crow. The air smells of sweat, damp fur, stale mead, and boiled cabbage, a combination that should not exist. And yet, here we are. As you sit up, your head bumps the low beam overhead, sending a puff of soot down your tunic. Another man is already pulling on his trousers beside you. He gives you a look that says, "We don't talk this early," which is fair, because your tongue feels like it's made of leather. You shuffle to the fire pit in the center of the room. Embers glow faintly. Someone's already started poking the coals back to life using a bone-handled poker. The warmth is a blessing, except you're fourth in line, and the first three are big men with thick cloaks and no intention of moving. A goat bleats directly behind you. You turn to find the household nanny goat chewing a pair of someone's socks and glaring at you like she knows you're new here. She probably does. Historians still argue whether goats were actually allowed to sleep inside longhouses or simply wandered in when no one was looking. Based on current evidence, the smell mostly, you suspect the latter. You glance around for a chamber pot. It's a small wooden bucket in the corner. It's full, overfull. You decide, firmly, that you don't need to go that badly. You try to remember your dream, but it slips away, replaced by the sound of someone coughing out a lung beside the entrance. It's Arn, a man whose beard seems to store crumbs from last week's turnip stew. He grunts a morning greeting, which may also be a threat. A child begins to cry. A woman hushes them. Someone passes you a chunk of bread that's so stale you're not sure if it's meant to be eaten or used as a weapon. This is your morning now. Your place in the longhouse is marked by a pile of belongings you barely understand. A leather satchel, a horn comb, a suspiciously damp fur, a wooden spoon that might also double as a knife if you squint hard enough. You hear the sound of a lid being lifted off a clay pot. Steam rises. Gruel is being prepared. You wish you didn't know that. The longhouse door finally opens with a groan like the dying breath of a tree. Icy wind slashes in and someone yells, "Don't let the pig out!" Too late, the pig's gone. Outside, the world is a smear of grays and browns. The sun hasn't quite risen, but the sky is already thick with the threat of another cold, wet day. You wrap your wool cloak tighter. It itches. Everything here itches. As you step out, your foot plunges into a puddle of slush. A chicken flutters past your face. Somewhere, far off, a dog barks and then immediately regrets it. Mainstream historians agree that Viking life was defined by constant adaptation to the brutal climate. And while romantic tales of long ships and raiding get the spotlight, most Vikings spent their days doing exactly this, not dying of exposure before breakfast. You make your way toward the outhouse, a wooden box teetering over a frozen trench only, to find it occupied by the goat. Again, you sigh, return to the house, and accept a cup of warm, weak beer. Water isn't exactly safe to drink, so fermented liquids are the default beverage, even for children. It tastes like sour barley with hints of regret. You stare into the fire, already longing for the next time you'll be allowed to sit near it. That'll be at night, when the elders gather to tell stories, argue about ancestors, and pretend the lice aren't winning. But for now, you better get ready. The day's only just beginning. And you have no idea how many turnips need to be hauled, goats wrangled, and insults dodged before nightfall. Good luck. You don't remember walking back to the longhouse. You must have, because here you are, blanket around your shoulders, boots off, dreamstone in one hand, bowl of lukewarm stew in the other. You're not hungry, not really, but the act of eating feels like the only thing tethering you to this plane of existence right now. Someone claps your shoulder. You flinch. It's Arn, looking as always like he just arm wrestled a bear in his sleep. Heard you went to Haldor's village, he says, settling beside you with the grace of a sack of bricks. You didn't die. That's something. You manage a weak smile. That's my new standard. A few others join the fire, all speaking around you, not to you, as if letting you slowly acclimate back into your human shape. Someone hands you mead. Someone else offers pickled fish. You take the mead. You pretend to take the fish. Eventually, the Jarl appears, standing behind the fire like a statue of decisions made. He says nothing for a while. Then, they agreed. The hall exhales. But, he adds, and that word lands like a stone in soup, they sent a binding. He glances at the satchel, which now rests on a shelf wrapped in a circle of runes and herbs. No one's touched it since you dropped it off. No one plans to. You ask, what kind of binding? He looks at you for a long moment. One that watches, he says. Great. Someone starts playing a bone flute, a soft, trembling melody that sounds a bit too much like someone humming through hollow ribs. It somehow soothes you anyway. You lean back, letting the warmth of the hearth erase the worst of your fatigue. The fire snaps gently. The Jarl begins to tell a story about his youth, about raiding in the west, about a man who tried to cook an eel by tying it to a torch. Laughter bubbles up. Someone snores. The tension begins to dissolve, slow as snowmelt. But deep inside, something lingers, a sense that something still knows your name, still remembers the shape of your footfall on that burial path, still listens when the wind dies down. You don't speak this aloud. Instead, you settle into your straw bed, blanket tight, dreamstone pressed to your chest. And as your eyes begin to close, you hear the old woman's voice drift across the room, barely louder than the fire. Sleep soft, stranger. Tomorrow's dreams are the ones that bite. The fire burns lower now. Its flickers have softened into gentle pulses of orange and gold, casting sleepy shadows on timber walls and faces at rest. Even Arn's snores have grown rhythmic like a lullaby composed by a bear. Outside, the wind has stilled. The trees no longer whisper warnings, only sway gently in surrender. The goat is asleep. The crow is silent. For now, you lie still, warmed by the shared breath of the longhouse, the fading scent of wood smoke, the feel of rough wool against your skin, the aches in your shoulders, your calves. Your thoughts are all distant now, like echoes across a fjord. No one speaks. No one needs to. Because for all the weight of oaths, of secrets, of names whispered once and never again tonight, you are simply here. A person in a straw bed, in a wooden hall, under a sky that will wait patiently until you wake. And perhaps, when you dream, you'll dream of snow falling quietly on the stones, of a forest path with no voices calling, of a satchel that remains forever closed, and of a world that, just for tonight, is gentle. Sleep well, traveler. The quiet routines, the bone combs, the cloak bundle somehow, it's all beginning to settle into a rhythm, a pattern, a slow song hummed beneath the wind. You find yourself standing by a stack of firewood, suddenly responsible for selecting the right logs. You have no idea what this means. You grab 3 that look moderately dry. A woman eyes them, shrugs, and mutters, "Close enough." Is that a win? You decide it is. As the sun lifts over the treetops and paints everything in silvery light, your fingers thaw slightly. You manage a smile. Then someone yells, "Chores!" and it vanishes instantly. You blink. Chores? You repeat like you didn't. Just wake up in a society powered almost entirely by them. But there's no mercy here, and certainly no coffee. You're shoved a woven basket and told to fetch what's dry. No further context, Turns out, that means kindling. You stumble toward the edge of the longhouse where a pile of thin twigs and brushwood leans sadly against the wall. Most of it's damp. Everything is damp. You select a few that snap rather than bend and pile them in the basket. A passing elder grunts approval. It might be the first positive feedback you've received since arriving. You set the basket down inside. Then another voice calls, "Milk the goat." Of course, the goat. The one with the murder. Eyes in penchant for sock consumption. You eye her across the yard. She eyes you back. It's a standoff. You approach cautiously, like she's a landmine. She turns, flicks her tail once, then resumes chewing something that suspiciously resembles a glove. You sit beside her, reach out, and she immediately kicks the pail. Historically, Viking farms were modest, often managed by the entire household. Goats were essential not just for milk, but for their uncanny ability to eat almost anything, including your dignity. You finally manage a single stream of warm milk. Before she wanders off, the pail tips again. It's fine. You'll just tell them she was dry. Water, comes the next call. Apparently, your usefulness knows no bounds. You're handed a yoke wooden beam with 2 ropes for carrying buckets. It's heavier than your self-esteem after the goat incident. The path to the well is muddy, narrow, and treacherous. You slip twice and almost lose a boot. At the well, an old man sits carving a spoon. He nods at you, but offers no help. You lower the bucket, fetch water, and immediately spill half on your leg. Classic. By the time you trudge back, your trousers are soaked, and a small child points out that your cloak is now muddy, like a pig's behind. You thank them with the last of your patience. You deposit the water only to find your next task. Gather eggs, chickens. You had hoped to avoid them, but here they are, clucking and plotting in the coop behind the longhouse. You reach in gingerly and are immediately pecked. Repeatedly. One hen chases you around the yard. You're sure she's possessed. No egg is worth this. Historians still debate the exact role of domesticated animals in daily Norse routines. Some believe they were seen as co-workers. Others argue they were tolerated nuisances. Based on your mourning, you'd say it's the latter with strong emotional damage included. Your final chore, mercifully, involves less livestock, scraping dried fish skins off a wooden board. It's not glamorous. But no one screams at you while you do it, and the rhythm is oddly soothing. The smell, however, will haunt you for decades. As you work, a woman hums nearby, pounding flax fibers into thread. You don't recognize the tune, but it has the cadence of something ancient-like. It's meant to keep your hands busy while your mind drifts. She glances at you. "You've done worse," she says casually. You're not sure if it's a compliment or an observation. You nod anyway. By now, the sun is high and your cloak has dried somewhat. You sit on a log, stealing a moment of stillness. The chores haven't killed you, but you've aged emotionally. A boy runs past with a wooden sword, chasing a pig. The pig's winning. A man yells something about hay storage. Another grumbles about those Danes again. And just like that, you realize you've survived your first Viking chore circuit. You're bruised, muddy, mildly traumatized by poultry, but still standing. You hear laughter behind you, deep, booming, and not unfriendly. A bearded man claps you on the back so hard your spine shifts. "Tomorrow," he says, "you carry the dung." You nod, then pretend you didn't hear him. So, you've survived the chickens, the goat, and the icy trip to the well, but before you can even consider hiding behind a haystack for the rest of the day, a horn sounds. Not the musical kind. This is the drop what you're doing and assemble immediately. Kind of horn low, deep, and alarming, even though no one around you looks particularly alarmed. A few people groan. Someone mutters, "It's Thing Day again?" And you're quickly swept up in a crowd of wool-cloaked villagers moving toward the meadow. Welcome to the Thing. No, not a monster, not a festival, not a party. It's the Viking Legal Assembly, and today you're about to attend your very first and possibly last Norse court. The field is muddy. Of course it is. People sit on tree stumps, rocks, and upturned barrels. There's a log reserved for the local jarl, but he's nowhere to be seen. Yet, a dozen men and women begin muttering about stolen sheep, disputed borders, and the suspicious disappearance of 3 loaves of barley bread. You stand at the edge, unsure what your role is here. Maybe just observe, blend in, don't attract attention. Too late. Someone points at you. The new one, they say. Tell us, is it theft if the goat walks into your field on her own? You freeze. Is this a test? A joke? A trap? You fumble for an answer, settling on, only if she stays past sundown? A pause. Then slow nods. Someone claps. You're not sure if you've just solved a land dispute or declared yourself responsible for all goat-related crimes. Historians still debate how formal Viking things truly were. Some describe them as solemn courtrooms under the open sky, others more like a mix of town hall, farmer's market, and a high-stakes gossip circle. Today's agenda includes accusing a fisherman of cheating with his nets. He denies it but does smell suspiciously of trout. Debating the exact shape of a shared fence. And resolving a who owns this axe drama that nearly escalates into an axe throwing contest. But then the Jarl arrives. He's younger than expected, tall, red hair braided with silver beads, cloak lined with fox fur and enough rings to start a jewelry stall. He surveys the crowd with a practiced gaze and sits without a word. An elder rises to greet him, offers ale in a carved horn, and murmurs some words in Old Norse that probably mean, "May your goat stay fertile and your enemies have fleas." The Jarl nods. The session continues. And now, the fish rights argument begins. You try to follow. It involves tidal flow, eel traps, and a dramatic accusation involving nets that sing. Which, honestly, sounds magical, but is probably just some old seaweed caught on a rock. Still, you're transfixed. At one point, a woman stands up, holds a fish aloft like a sacred relic, and yells, "This was caught in my cove." It slaps the ground dramatically. No one reacts. Apparently, this is normal. You glance around and realize the thing isn't just a quartet's a performance, a ritual, a way to release tension before someone buries an axe in the wrong person's door. It's democracy, with more mud and slightly more threats. You shift your weight and feel your boots squelch. You haven't felt your toes since breakfast. A dog is asleep on your cloak and you don't dare move it. Eventually, the Jarl raises his hand. Silence. He declares the fence will be moved. Half a pace to the left. The goat is no one's fault, and the fish, communal until the sea gods say otherwise. The crowd grumbles, nods, disperses. Someone nudges you and says, "Not bad for your first thing." You nod, unsure if they mean your goat diplomacy or the fact that you didn't get challenged to a duel. As the crowd scatters back to chores, you linger for a moment. The skies brightened, the clouds parting just enough to let a shaft of pale sunlight strike the wet grass. The Jarl walks past you, fast, cloak, rippling, and offers a single nod. You nod back. You're not sure if you just passed a test or got drafted for something worse. But either way, it's noon, and your stomach's making goat-like noises of its own. The thing is over. You've survived the mud debates, the flying fish, and the gaze of a Jarl who could probably snap a log with his pinky toe. But now, you face something far more daunting than goat law or eel disputes. Lunch. Back at the longhouse, the communal energy has shifted. People trickle in from fields, workshops, and wherever they were hiding from responsibility. Cloaks are peeled off and hung by the fire. Boots are thudded clean against the doorframe. You do your best to copy the motions, hoping no one notices your left boot is now mostly straw and regret. Inside, the longhouse is thick with the smell of stewerthy, salty, and with a hint of mystery meat. A woman stirs a cauldron suspended over the hearth. She lifts the lid, scowls, mutters something about someone watering it down, then slams it back shut. She sees you watching and barks, "Sit, don't hover, you sit," instinctively. You're handed a wooden bowl. It's not clean, none of them are, but it's warm, and that's enough. A ladle of thick grayish-brown stew is poured in, along with a wedge of barley bread that looks and feels like a roof tile. You take a bite. It's chewy, possibly eternal. The stew is better. Root vegetables, maybe a shred of dried fish or goat, and a thin layer of oil on top that probably wasn't always there. Still, it's hot. And it doesn't taste like betrayal. That's something. Beside you, a boy noisily slurps. A man tears his bread with canine intensity. A woman dips her bread and casually picks a beetle out before continuing. You mimic this with a beetle-shaped lump in your own bowl. It was a bean. Probably. Mainstream historians agree that Viking meals were simple and seasonal, relying heavily on preserved, food-smoked fish, dried meats, fermented vegetables. Salt was life, fat was gold, bread was a weapon. A dog appears at your side, tail thumping, eyes pleading, you give it a crust, it sneezes on your hand. Again, someone refills your bowl without asking. You're not sure if this is kindness or a test, you eat it anyway. Conversations around the fire rise and fall in a melodic rhythm. One man recounts the story of a seal that walked on land and stole his boots. Another insists he saw a ghost near the old well. A young woman talks about a traveling skull storyteller who once traded 5 riddles for a chicken. You don't know whether to laugh or write this down. You realize the stories are as nourishing as the stew, just easier to swallow. A lull settles, bellies full. People lean back on crates, benches, or the floor. A few take short naps. The fire pops, the stew simmers, and then someone claps twice. Everyone groans. Drill time, someone mutters. Already? Says another. You ate. Now you fight, says a third. You can't tell if they're joking. They are not. You're ushered outside, blinking against the light, your belly protesting. The meadow beside the village has been cleared of sheep for this purpose. Training. For raids. Or, more accurately, how not to die within the first 2 minutes of one. You're handed a shield made of wood and leather. It's heavier than expected. Then a spear, longer than it looks. Then a helmet. It smells like every terrible decision ever made while drunk. A burly man named Thorstein, because of course that's his name, starts barking orders. You try to follow. Stand wide, knees bent, shield up, spear forward. Not like that, he says immediately. Like you mean it. You don't. Again, he shouts. Raid formation. People shuffle into a tight circle, shields locking. You're somewhere in the middle, trying to remember if your health insurance covers historical confusion. A woman next to you elbows you gently. Don't drop your shield, unless you want a sword in your ribs. She grins like she's only half joking. Now yell, Thorstein roars. Everyone yells. It echoes across the valley. You yell too, a little late, a little too high-pitched. Thorstein walks by and grunts. We'll toughen you up. You're not sure if that's a promise or a threat. Historians still argue whether Viking raiding parties trained systematically or simply relied on real-life experience. But evidence suggests drills like these helped even farmhands learn to defend a village or at least not get skewered immediately. You practice jabbing the air. Your arms ache. Your shoulder complains. Someone accidentally hits you with the butt of a spear. You pretend it didn't hurt. Finally, Thorstein declares the session over. Good effort, he tells the group, then looks directly at you. Mostly. You collapse onto a rock, sweat soaking your wool. A sheep walks by and stares. You stare back. You both understand something unspoken. Neither of you was built for this. Your arms are jelly. Your knees feel like they've petitioned for retirement, and your tunic is clinging in places you didn't know could sweat. The Viking raid drill is over, but there's no applause. No cooldown, no orange slices. Instead, you're gently nudged by a child holding a bundle of carved sticks. Thing's over, she says. Now come sit and listen. You follow, because what else can you do? Your body needs a break, and your brain is curious. Plus, you're limping, and sitting sounds divine. You find yourself among a cluster of villagers lounging on low stools and logs just outside the longhouse. It's an odd little circle of men with braided beards, middle-aged women spinning flax between their fingers, a goat chewing what might have once been a sock. In the center, a smooth stone table and a few slabs of birch bark. The storyteller is already carving something into wood with a tiny blade and a worrying lack of urgency. Runes, whispers the woman beside you, and gossip. Apparently, it's time for the day's real entertainment. The Carvera man called Snorri because of course leans back and starts reciting a tale. It's about a bear, a thunderstorm, and a man who challenged Thor to a wrestling match and now walks backwards forever. The crowd chuckles. The goat snort. You're enthralled. Mainstream history confirms that the Norse had a rich oral tradition filled with sagas, skaldic poems, and moral fables. But most of what survives today was recorded centuries later. What you're hearing now, it might be half true, half embellished, and completely magical. After the tale ends, the discussion shifts naturally seamlessly into local gossip. You learn that Bjorn's eldest daughter was seen near the fjord at sunset with someone whose name no one will say, but everyone raises an eyebrow about. You learn that the smokehouse collapsed last week because someone, probably Arn, used green wood instead of dry. You also learn that a certain Jarl Not Yours, of course, was once caught trying to seduce a blacksmith's wife with a really bad poem and 3 underripe apples. Everyone laughs, loudly, except the goat. The goat never laughs. Then come the runes. Snorri carefully finishes carving a new one into a wooden staff. Protection, he says, for my niece's wedding. He holds it up. You squint. It looks like a squashed M. But everyone nods with solemn approval. Someone else produces a small pouch. Out tumble tiny stones, each marked with a rune. A woman with silver hair draws 3 and hums thoughtfully. Fehu, Rido, Isa, she mutters. Travel, wealth, and a frozen situation. People gasp. You gasp because it feels expected. She turns to you. You're new, she says. Draw one. You hesitate, but the circle watches. You reach into the pouch, fingers brushing cold stone, and pull one out. A jagged little mark shaped like an arrow. Tiwaz, she says softly. The warrior. The oath. Everyone's quiet. Good luck, she adds. Or very bad luck. Depends who you cross. You smile nervously. Someone pats your back. Hard. Historians still argue whether rune casting was truly divinatory or more symbolic use to prompt discussion, offer reflection, or just spice up a boring afternoon. But in this moment, it feels like magic. Or at least something you'll dream about later. The sun is beginning to dip lower now. The fire in the longhouse is being stoked again. A boy throws moss on it and is promptly yelled at. The smell is memorable. A few people begin to drift away to other tasks. A couple of teenagers grab bows and head toward the woods. A woman feeds scraps to a dog with one eye and a limp. You remain seated, head spinning slightly not from ale, but from the realization that stories are currency here. Social glue. And every person is a walking archive. You hear someone whispering behind you on old man, talking to a child. He points to a knot in a tree and says, "That's where the forest spirit sleeps." The child nods solemnly. You turn to look, just bark. But now you're not so sure. Someone next to you asks where you're from. You answer vaguely. They nod like they understand. You ask them the same. They pause. My grandmother came from a seal, they say, but my father doesn't talk about it. You blink. They smile. You move on. As twilight deepens and smoke curls upward into the pink sky, someone begins a song low, rhythmic, half a chant. Others join, no instruments. Just voices, layered and haunting, like the wind is singing with them. You don't know the words, but you hum along anyway. The song fades into silence, and for a moment, the entire village breathes in unison-like. Even the goats are exhaling, but your stomach, ever the contrarian, grumbles audibly. Someone laughs. Supper's not far off, a man says, if you're lucky. Back in the longhouse, the stew pot has been refreshed or reboiled, depending on your optimism. The smell is stronger now, saltier, and more committed. There's talk that someone added dried seal meat. Someone else swears it's just very old lamb. No one confirms either way. You're handed a bowl and take your place near the hearth. The glow flickers across weary faces. People huddle closer now, not just for warmth, but for shared exhaustion. The day has worn down even the loudest voices. The fire crackles like it's telling its own story. You eat in relative silence this time. No one even flinches when a child drops a spoon into the flames. They simply fish it out, blow on it, and keep eating. You pretend not to notice. Then someone leans over and whispers, "Have you been to the bathhouse yet?" You choke on a turnip. Bathhouse? Yes, is real. Contrary to the mud-caked reputation of medieval Europe, Viking societies were surprisingly fond of bathing. In fact, Saturday in Old Norse Logardagriz literally means bathing day. Cleanliness may not have been daily, but it was ritual. You're herded toward a low wooden building behind the longhouse. Smoke rises from a small chimney. You half expect a witch to emerge. Instead, two teenagers exit wearing steam and smugness. One hands you a bucket and says, "Try not to cry." You step inside. It's warm, oppressively warm. Stone benches line the walls. In the center, a massive stone basin filled with water that's not quite boiling but definitely not inviting. Steam curls around everything. Naked people everywhere. The rules of modesty have apparently taken the night off. You hesitate. Someone gestures. Clothes off. Bucket. Rinse. Sit. Don't faint. You obey, stripping down and pouring a bucket of warmish water over your head. It stings, not just from heat, but from the accumulated regret of not having bathed all day, possibly all week. You sit beside a man who smells like pine and old onions. He nods. "First time?" he asks. You nod. He offers a bundle of birch branches. "Beat yourself with these. Helps circulation." You laugh. He doesn't. So you give it a try gently at first, then with more confidence. It stings again. Somehow, it helps. Your muscles loosen. Your shoulders unclench. Even your spine starts believing in hope again. Mainstream historians confirm the Vikings regularly used sauna-like bathhouses, often with hot stones and steam to purify the body and maybe the soul. Whether for health, relaxation, or spiritual clarity, it was an essential ritual in Norse life. Across the bathhouse, someone starts singing, low, raspy, and melodic. Others join. It's not a performance. It's just part of the heat. You begin to forget the goat, the mud, the thing debates, even Thorstein's judging face. Someone hands you a piece of dry birch bark. "Wipe," they say. You wipe, no questions. Eventually, someone throws more water on the stones. The steam rises in a burst. It blinds you. You hear someone sigh like they've just solved all their problems. You try to copy it. It works. A little. You think about how strange this is. In a world of axes, law codes, and wool, everything this steamy little hut is, where people come to be human again. Someone jokes that the Jarl once passed out in here and woke up with his beard frozen to the floor. The others laugh. Too hard. That story must have legs. You exit into the night, wrapped in a wool robe and a new kind of exhaustion. One that's clean. Your skin tingles. Your breath steams in the cold air. Stars blink above like runes scrawled across a black sky. You're handed a cup of something warm. Not mead, not beer. It tastes herbal. You don't ask. You sip. You sit on a stump. The goat wanders by and doesn't even butt you this time. Peace. Briefly. Because you're told the Jarl wants to see you. Now, you're still warm from the bathhouse, blissfully clean, borderline drowsy, when someone taps your shoulder with the back of a ringed hand and says, "The Jarl's calling. Now." Every nerve in your body straightens. You ask, "What for?" They shrug. Could be ale, could be exile. Cool. You're led across the village in the dark, guided only by the light of oil lamps flickering behind animal skin windows. The sky above is velvet black, scattered with stars that seem far too judgmental tonight. Your robe flaps in the wind like you're pretending to be a wizard on laundry day. The Jarl's Hall looms a head bigger than the longhouse, with a carved dragon's head leering down from the roof beam. Two guards stand at the door. One nods, the other raises an eyebrow at your robe. You step inside. Warmth greets you first. Then the smell of roasted meat. Then the laughter deep and loud and just unsteady enough to mean mead has happened here. A long fire pit runs the length of the room, its flames licking shadows across beams carved with ships and serpents. And at the far end, half reclined on a fur-draped chair, is the Jarl. He sees you. He grins. "You survived the goat," he says, raising a cup. You blink. Yes, my lord. He gestures. Don't call me that. Sit. Drink. Tell me how many times you nearly quit. You sit, slowly, on a wooden bench beside him. A woman hands you a cup of dark, bitter mead. You sip. It punches you in the chest, then apologizes with a warm hug. The jar watches you over the rim of his horn. You showed up at thing. You didn't fall over during drill. You even bathed. Impressive. You try to say something humble. It comes out as a wheeze. Tell me, he says, leaning in, do you know how to lie? You freeze. Pardon? He chuckles. A man who can lie well makes a good scout. A bad liar gets skewered. You strike me as somewhere in the middle. You're not sure if that's a compliment. So you sip again. Mainstream history paints Jarls as regional chieftains leaders by bloodline and reputation. Some were warlords, others were diplomats, most were both before lunch. But historians still argue whether they were born to lead or simply the best at outdrinking everyone else. Your Jarl, he's sharp, sober under the mead, watching everything, testing you. He waves over a young man and says, tell them about the sheep wedding. The man sighs. It wasn't a real wedding. It had flowers, the Jarl insists. Someone just painted the sheep and tied bells to its horns. Everyone around the fire laughs. You join in, cautiously. Someone plays a stringed instrument near the hearth. A woman begins to sing in a language you don't recognize but feel like you once dreamt. A girl spins in slow circles to the music, her bare feet making soft sounds on the wood floor. Then the Jarl stands. Everyone quiets. He holds up his cup. This, he says, is the time between the dark and the dawn, when the fire is low and the world holds its breath. So drink, sleep, and be ready. Because tomorrow, the fjord won't fish itself. And Thorstein's still mad about the spear thing. He stares right at you, winks. The crowd laughs again. You raise your cup, smile, and nearly spill it down your robe. The fire crackles louder now. The music grows slower. People begin to lean on each other, eyes half closed, conversations drifting like smoke. You realize, suddenly, how tired you are. The Jarl returns to his seat, but not before clapping you on the back so hard your soul hiccups. Not bad for a stranger, he says. Sleep well. Try not to snore like Arn. Arn snores, you ask? He points at the fire pit. Arn is already unconscious on a bench, snoring like a bear sawing logs underwater. You set your cup down. You've met the Jarl. You didn't get exiled. And you might even have made a friend. Or at least avoided a duel. You make your way toward the door. The guard from earlier is still there, still judging your robe. He nods once. You lasted longer than most. Outside, the wind has softened. The stars no longer judge. They simply watch. You take one deep breath, then head back to the longhouse, where Dreamsand probably fleece await. You return to the longhouse under a canopy of stars, the mead still warm in your belly and the Jarl's slap still echoing somewhere between your ribs. You quietly open the creaky wooden door and slip inside, hoping not to wake anyone or any goat. Too late. Someone's already awake. It's the old woman with the crow. She's sitting near the embers, feeding the bird bits of dried apple and whispering lullabies that sound half spoken, half summoned. You try not to make eye contact. The crow stares anyway. You tiptoe past sleeping bodies tucked into every available corner, snoring, mumbling, occasionally scratching. It's like stepping through a field of living sacks of potatoes. You find your sleeping space, a thin straw mattress tucked against the wall. You sit, pull your scratchy blanket over your legs, and begin to settle in. Then a voice beside you says, "Want to hear a story?" You jump. It's a boy, no more than 10, holding a piece of driftwood carved with what looks like a squid riding a horse. He grins. It's about trolls. You're too tired to refuse, so you nod. He climbs into the space beside you, as if this is the most normal thing in the world. Trolls, he begins with theatrical seriousness, hate iron, hate bells, and hate good singing. But they love goats, and moss, and getting married. Married, you ask? He nods. Lots of weddings, underground. They wear stones on their heads for hats. That's how you can tell. A few others nearby stir at the word troll, and soon you've got an impromptu audience. The boy continues. One time, a man married a troll. Didn't know it until she ate his horse. You blink. How do you not notice that? She was very polite. Of course, someone else pipes up with a tale of a Nixier river spirit who lures people in with music. Another woman mentions a draugr, a walking corpse that guards treasure but smells like rotting fish and old regrets. This isn't a scary storytelling session. Not really. The tone is light, even cheeky. There's laughter, eye rolls, and the occasional well-timed fart that breaks the tension. These tales are the lullabies of the Norse world whispers, of the weirdness that hides behind the trees and inside the fog. Mainstream history often fixates on Viking gods and grand myths. Odin, Thor, Freyja, but it's the local folklore that reveals how the Norse really thought, the mischievous spirits, odd creatures, and cursed tales that fill their daily world with quiet suspense. You're handed a smooth stone. For dreams, someone says, keep it in your hand, keeps the bad ones out. You do. The crow lets out a single call from across the room. The old woman laughs softly. I dreamt of a white bear last night, she says, not looking up. Means someone's lying. Everyone goes quiet. You try not to move. Someone coughs. Someone else snores. A breeze sneaks through the cracks in the wall. The fire crackles. The boy beside you starts dozing mid-sentence, mumbling something about a fish with human hands. You close your eyes, holding the dream stone, wondering what kind of folklore you'll walk into if you fall asleep. That's when thunder rumbles in the distance. A low, grumbling, roll-long, and uneven. A few heads lift. Storm, someone murmurs, but it's not just any storm. The crow flaps suddenly and shrieks. The old woman stands. She picks up a small pouch and hobbles to the door. Someone says she's going to the spirit walk. No one moves to follow. They just stare at you like this now involves you somehow. Of course it does. Because you learn the seeress never walks alone. The door creaks open again and the cold rushes in like it owns the place. The old woman, everyone calls her simply the seeress, steps into the night, the crow fluttering onto her shoulder like this is all very routine. She doesn't say a word. She just pauses at the threshold, turns slightly, and gestures for you. You, of course, you rise, hesitating only long enough to tuck the dreamstone in your pocket. Someone near the fire whispers, "Don't look too long into her bag." That's all the encouragement you get. Outside, the village is still. The sky is a bruise of dark gray clouds, moving in fast from the fjord. The stars are gone now, swallowed. A wind pushes through the trees like a warning. The seeress walks slowly but deliberately, her silhouette framed by the dancing orange flicker of the longhouse fire behind you. She leads you away from the homes, past the goat pens. The goat hisses at you, you hiss back, and toward the edge of the woods. You think about turning back, but her crow watches you over her shoulder, and somehow that's worse than thunder. She brings you to a large stone glacial boulder ringed with herbs, feathers, bones, and carved sticks arranged like little gates around its base. A flat slab sits on top. You guess this is the altar. She sits, you stand, she begins unpacking her pouch. Inside are goat bones, bits of bark, some kind of root that smells like regret, and a length of blue wool twisted with hair whose you don't ask. You saw the rune, she says without looking up. Tawaz, the warrior. You nod. It's a sign, she continues, of burden, of promise, of choice. She lights a bundle of herbs with a flint spark, and the smoke curls around you in lazy spirals. It smells sweet and bitter, like honey mixed with pine and something that might be moss or mildew. Sit, she says. You do. Close your eyes. You do. And then she begins chanting not loudly, not theatrically, just soft, rhythmic syllables in Old Norse, like water lapping at a dock. The crow makes a clicking sound in his throat. You're not sure if it's joining in or correcting her pronunciation. The smoke thickens. The thunder rolls again, closer now. A few drops of rain spatter your face, cold and sharp. You don't move. She throws the bones. They clatter onto the stone. You open your eyes, just a sliver. The shapes they land in mean absolutely nothing to you. But she stares like they're a map. You're not meant to be here, she says softly. But here you are. Thanks. She touches one bone with her fingertip. This one, she murmurs, says you've already made an oath, even if you didn't know it. You think about the mead toast earlier, the weird rune drawing, the troll story, the goat. Oh no. Historians still argue. The seeress says suddenly, as if reading your thoughts, whether oaths taken unknowingly still bind, but the spirits have very little interest in legal nuance. You swallow. She points at another bone. You've been seen, she says, by something beneath the hill. It doesn't mind you yet, but if you stay, it will. The wind howls louder now, and the fire she lit hisses in protest. Rain begins in earnest cold sheets, falling slanted, but she doesn't flinch. Go back, she says. Sleep, but remember your name tomorrow and speak it only once. Your mouth goes dry. Why? Because, she whispers, names are keys. You don't know what that means. She blows out the herbs, stands, and begins packing the bones back into her pouch. The crow calls on Seshort, sharp, like a stamp of finality. Then she walks away. Just walks off into the storm, like this was a normal conversation. You sit there for a long moment, soaked and stunned, before realizing you're alone. Well, except for the stones. And whatever she said lives under the hill. You bolt upright. You run back through the wind, the mud pulling at your boots, thunder cracking just above the trees. When you burst into the longhouse, no one looks surprised. Someone's even warmed your blanket by the fire. You crawl in, heart still hammering, and try to pretend the chant isn't still echoing somewhere in your chest. Tomorrow, you decide you'll avoid anyone with a pouch. The storm rages through the night, slashing the longhouse walls with bursts of wind and rain like some moody god is drumming out his frustrations with a fistful of wet birch branches. Inside, it's quiet, too quiet. You lie awake beneath your damp blanket, the seeress's words ricocheting inside your skull like loose cartwheels. You've already made an oath. Speak your name only once. Something beneath the hill. You try to focus on the rhythmic snores of Arn, who sounds like a bear choking on a horn. It helps. Sort of. At some point, you drift off. And when you wake, it's not to the sunrise. It's to someone gently nudging your foot with what feels like the blunt end of a broom. You squint upward. It's a boy, maybe 14, with wild hair and a grin too wide for this hour. You're late, he says. For what, you croak? He hands you a folded tunic, a belt with actual embroidery, and, most concerningly, a small knife. The Jarl wants you. Fancy clothes day. Your stomach twists. You dress quickly, fumbling with the belt, trying not to look too terrified. The tunic is surprisingly soft, dyed deep blue, and smelling faintly of crushed juniper berries. Someone even braided your comb. You're either being honored or offered up. The Jarl's hall is humming with activity. The long table is laid with roasted fish, flatbread, fermented cabbage, and what might once have been a pigeon. There's also honey mead in abundance. This looks festive. You're led past warriors in polished leather, women in brooch-fastened dresses, and children chasing each other with sheep skulls playfully, you hope. Then, finally, to the Jarl himself. He sits straighter than last night, more regal, less mead wobbly. His red hair has been combed back. A silver arm ring glints on his forearm like an exclamation point. He gestures for you to sit. You do. I have something for you, he says. A task. You gulp. Yes, Jarl. He grins. Stop calling me that. Right, of course. Remember Thorstein? You do. Loud, spear guy, beard like a broom on fire. He says you lasted through drill. You didn't faint, you didn't scream much, and you didn't stab anyone, which put you in the top half of new recruits. That sounds promising. I want you to deliver something, the Jarl continues, to the next village. It's a scroll and a small package. You'll have a guide. It's nothing dangerous. Just don't lose it, or open it, or mention the goat. You blink. Which goat? He frowns. Good. You don't know. Someone hands you a wrapped bundle. Small. Heavy. Runes are carved into the wax seal. You absolutely do not want to know what's inside. Your guide appears a woman named Ragna with 2 knives, 1 eyebrow, and an aura that suggests she once stabbed someone for snoring. She nods at you. Let's go. But breakfast, you ask? She tosses you a hunk of bread. It's still warm. She's clearly not totally heartless. As you both set off through the village, passing people still waking, still yawning, still dragging firewood and regrets behind them, you realize something else. You are being watched. Not just by curious children or grumpy goats, but by the elders, the skalds. The old woman with the crow, who stands motionless in her doorway, her bird blinking slowly like it knows things you'd rather forget. Ragna doesn't say much. You reach the edge of the village. The path curves upward, through the trees and toward the mist-covered hills. Somewhere out there is another settlement. And whatever's in this scroll, mainstream historians agree that Viking societies often relied on trusted messengers, runners, riders, even children, to carry news, oaths, and objects across scattered homesteads. These messengers were often unpaid, usually unprepared, and occasionally eaten by wolves. You try not to think about that last part. As you step into the woods, the storm behind you now just a memory, Ragna finally speaks. If anyone asks your name, she says, tell them you forgot it. You blink. Why? She looks at you. Because names are keys. You stop. She smiles. Just a little. Then keeps walking. The forest greets you with a damp chill and the smell of pine needles, wet bark, and something faintly metallic like rusted iron or old magic. You follow close behind Ragna, who moves like someone born of shadow and wolf track. Her cloak barely rustles, and her boots never seem to land in puddles, which feels like cheating. You, on the other hand, step in everything. Every twig, every squish, every betrayal of mud finds you. The wrapped bundle bangs awkwardly against your side with each step, reminding you that you're technically carrying a mystery, a message, or possibly a small curse. After a long silence, you try small talk. So, how long's the walk? Long. Right. Conversation's off to a stellar start. The trees thicken around you, twisting pine, heavy spruce, birch with peeling bark like old letters half read. A crow calls far off. Or maybe it's the crow. You refuse to turn around. Eventually, you reach a stream. Ragna stops, crouches, and dips her fingers in. Still cold, she mutters. Then she looks at you. Drink. If it tastes strange, spit it out. Comforting. You kneel and sip. It's cold, sharp, almost sweet. No immediate visions or goat hallucinations. Good. As you stand, Ragna glances at your satchel. Don't drop it, or sit on it, or rest it on a burial mound. You pause. That's specific. Because someone did once, she says. He's still coughing up feathers. You nod slowly. Right. The trail narrows now, weaving between mossy boulders and gnarled roots. Every so often, Ragna pauses to listen not to the forest, exactly, but to the silence. You start to hear it too. The way the birds stop, the way the breeze stutters. It's like walking into a breath held by the world itself. Stop here, she says suddenly. You freeze. She crouches again, pulling a piece of thread from her belt. It's red. She ties it around a twig and places it in the path. You lean in. What's that for? Marking that we pass through. For others. Friends? Hopefully. Historians still argue whether Vikings truly used thread markers like this, or whether it's a later Norse superstition. Either way, it feels ancient, intentional, like it's not just for the living. You continue on, and just as the path begins to widen, Ragna stops again. There, she says. Ahead, the trees open into a clearing. A hill rises from the center, dotted with stone stall, flat, half sunk. Some stand upright, others tilt like tired soldiers. The grass is short, wind-brushed, and strangely quiet. You know what this is before she says it. A burial field. You gulp. Should we go around? She shakes her head. This is the way. Of course it is. The two of you walk slowly now. You can't help but glance at the stones, half expecting one to twitch. They don't, but the air hums differently here, heavier. Like sound doesn't echo quite right. Ragna stops at one stone and presses her palm to it. My uncle, she says simply, died at sea. We buried his shield here. You don't ask questions. Instead, you follow her lead, bow your head slightly, and keep your feet on the narrow path that cuts between the stones like a thread through cloth. Then, behind you, you hear a voice. Faint, calling your name. You whip around. No one's there. Did you hear? Don't answer it, Ragna says sharply. You nod, mouth dry. Right. But it knew my name. She looks at you. Did you speak it today? You shake your head. Then it didn't know, it guessed. You don't reply, mostly because you're too busy trying to keep your heart from launching out of your chest. You move faster after that. Soon, trees close back in around you. The forest begins to feel normal again. If cold, damp, and extremely judgmental counts as normal. Eventually, smoke curls into view between the trees. The next village. Ragna stops just before the path bends. From here, you go alone. You blink. What? They'll be watching. If you arrive with me, they'll think it's political. If you come alone, you're just a messenger. Less risk. You hesitate. But what if they ask? Tell them the Jarl sent you. Say nothing more. She reaches over, presses something into your hand. A small stone. Smooth. Warm. For courage, she says. Or teeth, depending on how things go. And with that, she vanishes back into the woods, silent as mist. You stand there, bundle in one hand, mystery stone in the other, and the vague sensation that your life is being written by someone who enjoys plot twists. You sigh and walk toward the smoke. The village rises ahead like a riddle, half-answered low, thatched roofs sloping under the weight of yesterday's rain, smoke curling in lazy spirals from narrow chimneys, and a wooden palisade fence that looks more symbolic than secure. You pass beneath an open gate flanked by carved wolf-head posts. One is cracked, the other is missing an ear. No one greets you, at least not at first. You walk slowly, bundle clutched against your side, trying to look like someone who knows exactly where they're going and not like someone who was just abandoned by a knife-wielding woman in a troll-infested forest. The first villager you pass is a boy, barefoot, hair matted into natural disaster. He stares. You nod. He blinks once and vanishes behind a cart like he's seen a ghost. Great start. A few others peek from doorways. A man adjusts a bowstring. A woman scrapes something unidentifiable into a pot. Everyone watches. No one speaks. You reach what must be the hall smaller than your Jarl's but carved with the same runes and serpent motifs. A thin dog sleeps on the porch. It raises its head, sniffs, then lies back down like you're not worth the effort. You step to the doorway and knock. Once. Twice. A man answers. Not old, not young. Balding, with deep lines like a river system across his forehead. His eyes scan you, not with suspicion, but calculation. Message, he says. You nod and hold out the bundle. He doesn't take it immediately, just stares at it. From Rovald? That must be your Jarl's name. You nod again, hoping that's right. He takes it then, turns it over, frowns at the seal, doesn't open it. Then, wait here. He disappears inside. You stand awkwardly on the porch, wet feet in your too fancy boots, watching a chicken attempt to climb a barrel. A woman walks by and mutters something under her breath. You catch only one word, Outlander. After a moment, the man returns. You'll stay the night, he says. We'll respond in the morning. He gestures to a shed-like structure near the edge of the hall. There, dry straw, no fire. You want to argue, but the way he says no fire feels less like a policy and more like a warning. You nod. Thank you. Inside the shed, it's dry. Barely. A pile of straw in the corner suggests guest quarters. You sit. The door creaks shut behind you. And locks. Mainstream historians suggest that Norse villages varied widely in custom, some welcoming, some wary, many both. Trust had to be earned, and messages from other Jarls could mean alliances or ambushes. You lie back in the straw, watching dust spiral in the last light of the day. Your body aches in places you didn't know existed. Your mind replays the Cirrus's words again, like a curse stuck in your teeth. Night falls fast. You drift toward sleep until you hear voices outside, not angry, not shouting, just deliberate. Men talking. Someone saying your name. Twice. You sit up. Should they know your name? The door doesn't open, but the voices fade. You lie back again, heart drumming against your ribs like a war drum trying to be polite. You wake in the middle of the night, not to sound, but to the lack of it. Even the wind is holding its breath. Then a tap 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 on the wall behind you. Slow, measured, you whisper, "Who's there?" No reply. Just another tap. Then silence. You grab the dreamstone from your pouch, hold it tight, and speak your name quietly once. Just once. Because names are keys, and some doors shouldn't open too easily. You don't sleep much after that. Dawn creeps in reluctantly, like even the sun isn't entirely sure it wants to be involved in whatever last night was. A soft mist clings to the village, curling around rooftops and drifting low through the paths like a ghost hunting for its morning porridge. You emerge from the shed, stiff, itchy from straw, and still clutching the dreamstone like it's a lifeline. The lock on the door clicks as it's opened from the outside. Not a word is said. The same man from yesterday simply nods for you to follow. You pass the same cracked wolf totems, the same uninterested dog, and are led back into the hall. Inside, the air is thick with hearth smoke and something herbal-like boiled pine mixed with mead. Several people sit around the long table, including a tall woman you hadn't seen before. Her hair is white not from age, but from some stubborn act of nature. She wears a cloak fastened with twin raven brooches. This is someone important. She watches you as if flipping through the pages of your soul. "We've read the message," she says without preamble. "Your Jarl is clever and ambitious." You blink, nod slightly, unsure if you're meant to speak. "But cleverness," she continues, "can invite attention from things that don't like being noticed." She taps a finger on the table. Her nails are short but worn, as if used more for carving than vanity. "We've agreed to the terms," she adds, "but only if the seal remains unbroken." You hesitate. "I didn't." "We know," she says. There's silence. Then she rises. "You'll carry our reply," she says, "and something else." A small satchel is placed on the table. Dark leather, stitched with gold thread in patterns that resemble constellations, though none you recognize. It's heavier than it looks when she pushes it towards you. "Don't open it," she warns. You try to laugh lightly. "Wouldn't dream of it." Her eyes narrow. "Good, because it dreams back." Mainstream scholars often dismiss claims that certain Norse objects were alive, but sagas and oral histories are filled with references to enchanted pouches, whispering runes, and bindings that held not just secrets, but spirits. You tuck the satchel into your cloak as reverently as you can without shaking visibly. "Leave by midday," she says. "You'll want to pass the ridge before the fog returns." You stand, give the kind of awkward bow no one really teaches, and back toward the door. Outside, Ragna is waiting. You stop. "You said I'd go alone." She smirks. "Plans change, or maybe I was lying." You eye her. "Are you lying now?" "Definitely," she says. Still, you're relieved. The forest feels less horrifying when you're walking beside someone who looks like they could casually stab a bear and then complain about the weather. The return path is faster, quieter. You both say little at first, just the crunch of boots, the rustle of wind through furs, and the occasional distant snap of a twig that neither of you acknowledge. Eventually, curiosity overtakes caution. "What's in the satchel?" you ask. Ragnar shrugs. "Could be a peace token. Could be a curse." Comforting. She nods. "Don't worry. Most of the cursed ones hum. That one hasn't made a sound. Yet." The burial stones appear again, rising out of the mist like tired memories. You pass them carefully, feet never straying from the narrow path. No voices call this time. That's somehow worse. By the time you reach the clearing outside your village, your legs ache, your brain hums from too many unanswered questions, and your mouth is dry with the taste of unspoken names. Ragna stops at the edge of the trees. From here, you finish it. You want to argue, but then she hands you something wrapped in cloth. Inside, a second stone, nearly identical to your dream stone, except this one is marked, scratched, like it's already been used. For the next storm, she says, and turns away. No goodbye, no promise of seeing each other again. Just mist and trees, closing behind her like a final page turned. You walk back into the village carrying 2 pouches, 1 message, and far too many questions. The Jarl sees you before you even reach the hall. He steps outside, arms folded, eyes scanning your face like a blacksmith inspecting flawed iron. Well? You hand him the scroll first. He takes it without comment. Then, carefully, you offer the satchel. He doesn't touch it. Instead, he says, "Did it whisper to you?" "Number." He nods. "Good," he says. "That means it hasn't noticed you yet." Yet, he turns and walks back inside. You remain on the threshold, wind tugging at your cloak, wondering if this is how errands usually end around here. Spoiler, you don't remember walking back to the longhouse. You must have, because here you are blanket around your shoulders, boots off, dreamstone in one hand, bowl of lukewarm stew in the other. You're not hungry, not really, but the act of eating feels like the only thing tethering you to this plane of existence right now. Someone claps your shoulder. You flinch. It's Arn, looking as always like he just arm wrestled a bear in his sleep. "Heard you went to Haldor's village," he says, settling beside you with the grace of a sack of bricks. "You didn't die. That's something. You manage a weak smile. That's my new standard." A few others join the fire, all speaking around you, not to you, as if letting you slowly acclimate back into your human shape. Someone hands you mead. Someone else offers pickled fish. You take the mead. You pretend to take the fish. Eventually, the Jarl appears, standing behind the fire like a statue of decisions made. He says nothing for a while. Then, they agreed. The hall exhales. But, he adds, and that word lands like a stone in soup, they sent a binding. He glances at the satchel, which now rests on a shelf wrapped in a circle of runes and herbs. No one's touched it since you dropped it off. No one plans to. You ask, "What kind of binding?" He looks at you for a long moment. "One that watches," he says. "Great." Someone starts playing a bone flute, a soft, trembling melody that sounds a bit too much like someone humming through hollow ribs. It somehow soothes you anyway. You lean back, letting the warmth of the hearth erase the worst of your fatigue. The fire snaps gently. The Jarl begins to tell a story about his youth, about raiding in the west, about a man who tried to cook an eel by tying it to a torch. Laughter bubbles up. Someone snores. The tension begins to dissolve, slow as snowmelt. But deep inside, something lingers, a sense that something still knows your name, still remembers the shape of your footfall on that burial path, still listens when the wind dies down. You don't speak this aloud. Instead, you settle into your straw bed, blanket tight, dreamstone pressed to your chest. And as your eyes begin to close, you hear the old woman's voice drift across the room, barely louder than the fire. "Sleep soft, stranger. Tomorrow's dreams are the ones that bite." The fire burns lower now. Its flickers have softened into gentle pulses of orange and gold, casting sleepy shadows on timber walls and faces at rest. Even Arn's snores have grown rhythmic like a lullaby composed by a bear. Outside, the wind has stilled. The trees no longer whisper warnings, only sway gently in surrender. The goat is asleep. The crow is silent. For now, you lie still, warmed by the shared breath of the longhouse, the fading scent of wood smoke, the feel of rough wool against your skin, the aches in your shoulders, your calves. Your thoughts are all distant now, like echoes across a fjord. No one speaks. No one needs to, because for all the weight of oaths, of secrets, of names whispered once and never again tonight, you are simply here. A person in a straw bed, in a wooden hall, under a sky that will wait patiently until you wake. And perhaps, when you dream, you'll dream of snow falling quietly on the stones, of a forest path with no voices calling, of a satchel that remains forever closed, and of a world that, just for tonight, is gentle. Sleep well, traveler.